It's recording now. And we're starting.
The broadcast is now starting. All attendees are in listen-only mode.
Hi, everybody. Welcome to the Wednesday webinar. This week it's business and legal, and I'm Tom Biscaglia, chair of the IGDA board of directors, and also the topical wrangler for the business and legal webinars. So this week we have the honor, I have the honor and pleasure, whatever, of bringing my friend Marty O'Donnell in to talk about a business thing. Now, you know, Marty's a musician and a composer and an audio designer, but he also has been involved in the business of games for a long time. And I think Marty, of all the people I know, is very passionate about being able to maintain a creative posture and stay creative while you're still being able to make a living doing what you love. And so I thought he'd be a great person. Just as a little housekeeping, see if this works. There's a little square down there in the corner. Where's that third slide? Come on. I'm about as good at, there we go. Let's see if I can make this one go.
Technology.
Okay. Come on. Anyway, there's a little box down there in the corner where it says questions. And you should be able to put your question there, and I'll try to pick up on it and ask Marty. Marty, you want to take questions on the fly during the presentation, or do you want to finish up and then do Q&A at the end?
Yeah, I'll finish up, and then let's do Q&A at the end.
All right, so I'll accumulate the questions, and we'll ask Marty the whole bunch of them at the end. Cool. So I am, without further ado, I will pass the baton back over to Marty, and we'll get started.
All right.
Yeah, there it is.
There it is. Hidden weapons, but I don't know what this is saying. Hello, everybody. I'm glad. I don't know how many people are here, but whatever it is, you're in for a little treat, hopefully, because I'm not going to get into business immediately. I'm going to sort of go through my story about why I think creativity is the most important thing in the industry that we're in, and frankly, any entertainment industry. The picture you're seeing right now is actually a sunset taken off the deck of where we live in Mukilteo, Washington, and that's actually incredibly inspirational for me to be able to be in an environment. The Pacific Northwest is beautiful, and it helps me stay creative. So that this is a presentation that I normally give with notes because I'm in presenter mode, but this time I'm going to have to just sort of wing it because apparently I can only see what you're seeing. Since my PowerPoint skills are not spectacular and I tend to do things in a stream of consciousness way, I'm going to have to try to follow my previous stream of consciousness in real time. So let's just see what happens. First of all, I'm just going to give you a bunch of background on who I am. Obviously, my mother was a piano teacher. My father was a film director. Probably the most grateful thing that I have in my life is that I've never heard my parents say to me, "You can't make a living doing that." And frankly, I'm one of the few people I know that had parents that were absolutely encouraging the creativity from the very get-go. We had a piano my entire life. I could never stop touching the piano every time I walked through the room. I'm going to take you way back. I was 4 years old. My father brought home an album, and this was the music he played. Yes, soundtrack to Ben-Hur. I heard this music and I was completely transfixed. I saw the pictures in this little brochure, and then I saw this picture, and and I knew this is who I wanted to be. I wanted to be Nicholas Rosa, which is kind of scary for a 4-year-old to aspire to be that guy. But I wanted to be able to write music and make people feel things the way I felt when I was 4 years old. So that was my first goal. A few years later, I heard this.
Yesterday, all my troubles seem so far away.
And so I knew
how it looks as though they're here to stay.
That I wanted to be a rock star. So I changed my whole goal at that point. Of course, neither of those things exactly worked out. I knew I wanted to do something with music. I thought being a rock star would be better, and frankly, it was going to hopefully help me get girls better. And that kind of worked out. But I've been married for, did I say but? My beautiful wife, Marcy, and it's been great. Oh yeah, this is, see, I don't have my notes. This is, I can't remember the guy's name. He's a Buddhist guru, and one of the things he said was, don't follow in the master's footsteps, seek what they sought. And the reason I want to say that is because no matter what inspires you to be creative, just copying what you hear isn't going to get the same result. But I think it's really important to seek what the masters sought. Whatever they were after, that's what I wanted to go after. So even though I wasn't going to be Nicholas Rosa and write, movie scores for Ben-Hur, and I was never going to be a rock star, although I didn't know it at the time, I still wanted to seek, I think, that goal of being able to make music that would make people feel something emotionally. So let's see what the next picture is. Oh yeah. Here's another hero of mine. He had a statement about life bursting forth and will not be contained. I use the same quote, and I wish I could quote it now. It's not on my screen, but the quote is, take that quote about life not being able to be contained, but always breaking forth no matter what, and replace life with the word creativity. And that's pretty much what I think is what happens with creativity. You cannot contain it. No matter what sort of suppression happens, or however beat down you get through crunch or whatever it is, creativity will almost always break forth. Although, as we will see, I think there are some things that can beat it up pretty good. And then I think what's coming up now is another a person who I enjoy listening to, Steve Jobs, who sort of blew up the concept of, for me, I was one of there are two types of people in the world, people who believe in dichotomies and people who don't, if you understand what I mean by that. Thinkers and doers have always been something that are like on opposite ends. And Steve Jobs has a really great quote about thinkers and doers. I'm going to play it for you now.
My observation is that the doers are the major thinkers. The people that really create the things that change this industry are both the thinker-doer in one person.
So just a good reminder to me that, especially in this business, you can't just be one or the other. The thinker-doer is, I think, someone who's going to be the most successful. So you can't just sit around and just say, well, I'm a creative and I don't really know how to do anything except have massively cool ideas. That just isn't going to work, and I don't really think it works very well any place. You have to be able to do and think at the same time. Oh yeah, and this is a picture. And now, by the way, I realize why making a PowerPoint that has no words on the screen is difficult if I don't have my notes. Yeah, who knows what this is? This is actually what they call the only example of Neanderthal art that we know of, and that's what separates us from Neanderthals and Homo sapiens. We coexisted for a while, but Homo sapiens actually did this, was the art that Homo sapiens did. This is actually an axe handle. What's cool about this is there's no reason to carve an image like this on an. So Neanderthals were more in the invention is necessity is the mother of invention kind of creative creatures, and Homo sapiens are like, no, creativity is the mother of cool inventions. That's my thing. So I just think this is some images from the British Museum has an exhibit on Homo sapien art, which is really cool. Anyway, this is what we all aspire to. We make art because we can't help ourselves, and we're different than every other species on the planet, and I think that's really amazing. All right. Oh, so I became a piano major in college. So we'll get through some of this stuff fast. Here's some Brahms that I played. Here's some Debussy, for those of you who know piano. Anyway, but of course, I also wanted to be in a rock band because I still had this goal of getting girls, and playing piano like that wasn't necessarily. So I also started a band which did progressive rock and fusion. If you wonder what progressive rock is essentially rock and roll, except you play for like 15 minutes before you start singing. And each song is about a half hour long. Fusion is the fusion between rock and jazz and blues, and it's highly technical. You have to really be pretty good at playing in order to do it. So here's a few examples. 10 minutes later, the singing starts. Jethro Tull. Oh, by the way, I played flute too, so I'm live. That didn't work well either. How many people know Gentle Giant? Everybody who's raised their hand now. I can't see you, but I'm sure somebody's raising their hand.
She can see whatever.
All right. Chick Corea, this is. Excellent. And then, of course, one of the best licks ever written. I know Tom. How did they get back on one? It's so great. So what happened? I taught, those were songs that we covered in my band, and I was the guy who had to figure everything out and teach it to the guys in the band. And at one point, my drummer said, "Marty, why do you keep teaching us all these songs? Why don't you actually start writing something? You know, if you're so good at figuring stuff out, why don't you write your own thing?" And that was something that had never occurred to me, so I did. I switched to composition, started taking classes in composition. Stravinsky, of course, just symphonic rock and roll. Here's some other stuff. Samuel Barber, hugely influential. Adagio for string. I hope you guys can hear this music. It sounds good here. Pulse, the planets. Just gorgeous. Ralph Vaughan Williams. If I can ever write something like that, I'll just, after I'm done. Bartok string quartets, absolutely tremendous. Started studying these when I was at grad school. And then, of course, film music. Jerry Goldsmith. Alien. Hugely influential for me. So at this point, I'm at USC graduate school. I'm sure you guys are wondering, like, when am I going to get to anything that has to do with business or games? Well, just hang on. That's the way this goes. The black and white picture is Halsey Stevens, who was the biographer of Bela Bartok. The color is Robert Lynn. Robert Lynn was chairman of our department at USC, and he invited me and the other TAs many years ago to his house. And he said, "Hey, Marty, you should meet my son, who's named Roger, who's got a little project going on in his garage." And what Roger was making was Roger Lynn was making the Lynn drum. And so I got to see a version of the Lynn drum machine. If any of you know what that is, it was absolutely a breakthrough in digital audio. It was the first digital audio sampling machine for musicians. To see him working with it, he had people like Paul McCartney and Stevie Wonder with the early versions of the Lynn drum, and it was amazing. His friend there, Dave Smith, invented the Prophet 5. I got to see the very first Prophet 5 shown at USC. But of course, I was a poor person, so I couldn't do anything about that. I went back to Chicago and started working as a grip on a film set, and I didn't think I was going to get into the music business. I was going to be a teacher at American Conservatory of Music because I had a master's now in music composition. And while I was on the set the summer I moved back to Chicago, the producer came up to me and said, "Hey, Marty, you've got a degree in music. Why don't you write music for film and television? Because I don't want to prostitute my art." So I hope you're all laughing to yourself at this point, because it's an amazing thing to grow up loving music and wanting music or wanting to make art in some way, and then when finally, after you get through with education, someone asks you to do something and you say you don't want to prostitute your art. Thankfully, the thing that happened, and this is true, the very next day on the very same set, the director came up to me and said, "Marty, I'll give you $500 to score this little film." And I said, "Yes." So that's how quickly I changed that. I would love to say that I found out that my price for prostituting my art was $500. Of course, it wasn't. I had to find somebody to help me. So I went to my friend, Mike Salvatore. He had a little studio in his basement. I told him I'd split the money with him. Of course, what happened there was we realized after we got the $500 for the first little thing we did that we also had to split it with the government. So at the end of the day, my price was about $167 to prostitute my art. Anyway, what we did was, thinking about creativity and necessity, we had some equipment there that night that wasn't ours. It was from one of Mike's clients, Prophet Pro 1, a TR-808. Here's Mike's 8-track. I looked at the back. These things didn't hook up. This is before MIDI. So now necessity plus creativity plus a little bit of desperation, we figured out how to run a cable through an amplifier and connect these two things together, and I kept turning the volume knob until the sequencer on the Prophet Pro 1 was driven by the clock out of the TR-808. For those of you who don't know what that means, that's okay. What it meant was we were able to do this really cool little punky thing, and here it is. This is the first piece Mike and I ever did together. This is how we got gigs. It's not exactly pulsed, but there you go. The second piece we did is this one here, so listen to this. That very same night, believe it or not, I took that in the next day and was able to sell it along with the first piece. So now we've got a $500 thing, and then we got this, whatever this totals up to, $550. Hey Tom, looking at this, do you see? Look at this bill. It's wonderful. Payment due for non-exclusive rights to the music and white noise. That's the last time I think I was able to do a contract like that. So I think that's pretty funny. Is anybody laughing?
Yeah, but not the last time you ever do a contract like that.
Exactly. The other thing that's fun to learn about this is I found this invoice, which cracks me up. Actually, it's, as you can tell, it's from the Polypack set of invoices. It's dated 9/9/82, and it was paid December 1st, '82. So even then, they're squeezing you for months. See, this is why I'm so good. Aren't I good, Tom? When I pay bills, I pay very quickly on time. But boy, people don't pay me on time. Anyway, the next thing that happened was I was a grip, and as a grip on a set, we were starting this idea of having a music company, but I was gripping on a set, and I worked for a guy named Joe Settlemeyer. And one of the things I did was besides running cable and setting up lights, there was a woman actress named Clara Peller, and she couldn't hear at all. So I would be below the set, and I would tug on her skirt in order for her to say her lines on cue. So this is who Clara Peller is.
It certainly is a big bun.
It's a very big bun.
Big, fluffy bun.
It's a very big, fluffy bun.
Where's the beef?
Some hamburger places give you a lot less beef on a lot of bun.
Where's the beef?
At Wendy's, we serve a hamburger we modestly call a single.
We were working on another commercial with, believe it or not, Clara Peller was in it. It was a series of chicken restaurant commercials for Mrs. Winters. Joe Settlemeyer started singing a little tune in rhythm with this rotating chicken-shaped menu that the people were looking at. And he sang this little tune, and since I was the one rotating the chicken menu, I wrote the tune down, went back to the studio, and produced it, and this is what I produced. Bear with me. So I came in the next day and snuck that cassette of that recording into what we call the dailies. The dailies are what Joe and all the clients would watch the day after they shot a bunch of stuff. And Joe was very particular. He always chose his own music. I snuck this music in. We're in this darkened theater. They're all watching the dailies, and it's all these shots of people doing this with their heads, and that music starts playing. Joe shot up out of his chair, left the room, came back about 30 seconds later, pointed at me and said, "Did you write that music?" And I said, "Yeah." And he says, "You're done gripping. You're scoring my next 3 commercials." So, so creativity, a little desperation, and taking advantage of your opportunities, hugely important. That sort of got our career going. We were able to finally buy that Prophet 5 with the poly sequencer, which was amazing. And then the next commercial we did turned out to be a classical style commercial for McDonald's. The assignment was to do a classical version of "You Deserve a Break Today" without singing, just that melody. So I decided to combine it with Beethoven's Eroica Symphony, the 3rd Symphony, and this is the result of that. Those of you who know either one of these things should be laughing now, I hope. So this led us to be able to move our studio downtown Chicago. So the funny thing about that little recording is it's all Prophet 5 synthesizer plus Mike's wife, Gail, who played violin. So we just kept overdubbing her on the 8-track, playing violin until we almost sounded symphonic. So here we are downtown. What happens next? Oh, this is the demo version. The story here is the guy asked us to do a demo, and we did. Here's Mike's 2 daughters singing.
We're Flintstone kids, 5 million strong and growing.
5 million.
We're Flintstone kids, 5 million strong and growing. We're Flintstone kids, 5 million strong.
Just the announcer saying "and growing" at the end. What was funny about that, what's funny to me, was the client we had said he had no money for us to do a demo. He had this idea, It wasn't the approved idea from the agency, and they were using this as a throwaway. And he says, if I could just have some music, I think I might sell it better to the client. Sure enough, that's the music we played. The client liked that version better than the approved version from the agency. We got to do it, and we did it for years. But we did it for free, and that's the important thing to remember. Tom's probably shaking his head, why did you do it for free? Sometimes you just have to do things because the opportunity is right and you want to keep your client. So this was something we had to do. But believe it or not, we did it a couple of times and before we got the right one to present to the client. Just before we recorded this final thing, they came in and they said, the lawyers have approved that we can say 10 million instead of 5 million.
We are Flintstones kids, 10 million strong and growing. We are Flintstones kids, 10 million strong
Wait for it.
and growing.
So cute. That's my daughter when she was 5 years old, singing and growing. And by the way, that helped put her through college. She was only 5 when she sang that. It's years ago. She's now 67. Good. I'm only hearing Tom laugh. I hope there are other people here laughing about whatever I'm saying. All right, let's see. What's next? Fading out? I have no idea what's coming up.
Cat 3, with the power to absorb odors and deodorize for a fresh, clean scent, making Tidy Cat 3 the #1 cat box filler in America. So whether you have one of these or lots of them, all you need is one of these. The Tidy Cat team clobbers cat box odor.
Yeah, I could have set that up, but it's actually good just to shockingly see it. That's a commercial we did after a few years. We had built a couple more studios. While we were working in that commercial, believe it or not, we were arguing about how to do the cat and do different things musically. And it was probably 2 in the morning. We were working on this, the 10th revision of this commercial. And it suddenly dawned on me, oh, I actually have prostituted my art. So the thrill of having your stuff on commercials, we at this point we had done commercials that were on the during the Super Bowl and during primetime television. Eventually, that sort of it no longer got me going. It was no longer exciting. And the Tidy Cat commercial was the moment when I realized I want to do something else. So I had a friend who came over about this exact time who showed me this game called Myst, but it was the beta version of the game. He was 18 years old. He was working, his name was Josh Staub, and he was working with the boys out in Spokane, Washington. And he said, yeah, I'm working on this cool project. Let me show it to you. And he showed me this beta version of it. And it opened my eyes to a whole new medium. I had always played games, and I had all the consoles, but I never really thought that there was a place for me in the game industry until I saw and heard Myst. So once again, I thought, well, I got to take advantage of my friend who's working with these guys. I want him to get him to introduce me to Robin and Rand Miller. Anyway, when the game came out, I took the score that Robin made and did a remix, and here's a little bit of that. So what you're going to first hear is Robin's music, and then it's going to go into our music version of it. This is actually a pretty cool version of this piece. I should put it up online someplace so people can listen to it. So that's me and Mike a few years ago during the Myst days in our new studio. Sure enough, we got to build a gorgeous studio. We got to do some games. We did Riven, the sequel to Myth. We did Myth for Bungie, who was in the area. We did Myth 2 Soul Blighter. We did a game called Subterracor, which was an amazing game because all the dialogue was recorded. It had more recorded dialogue at that moment than any other game ever. But the nice thing about that was I was able to use the people I knew in Chicago who were voiceover people, like Pete Stacker, who ended up becoming Sergeant Stacker, and Captain Keyes in Halo. Tim Dodabo, who ended up being Guilty Spark, and other characters in Halo, and Steve Downs, who had a major role in Subterracore, and then I used him to play the Master Chief in Halo. Now I'm going to play you. I think a tune is going to come up here is from the epilogue of Myth 2, and see if you sort of recognize it. Yeah, what a cheat. At least I wrote this, but of course I copied it later. But here's what happened first. Yes, our studio burned to the ground, and we absolutely lost everything. The tragic thing about the studio burning to the ground in the middle of all this work was I had sort of anticipated the importance of archiving all of your masters and recordings. So DAT tape was a new thing at the time. So we took all of our masters and we committed them to DAT tape. So I had a digital copy of everything we'd ever done. And then I thought, well, I should probably have a copy of that. So I made a copy of the DAT tapes. So I had one DAT tape library at the front of my studio and one DAT tape library at the rear of my studio. Of course, if the entire studio burns, you still lose everything. So I didn't take any of those off site. So believe it or not, all the music you've heard up till now has been cassette copies because I've lost all the masters at this point. However, once again, creativity and desperation will succeed. During this point, we had an opportunity to write a piece for Steve Jobs' Macworld 99 for this new project we were working with Bungie called Halo. And once again, I was back at Mike's studio in his basement, and we started writing. So that led to Halo 2, 3, Reach, Destiny, and I finally got to work, believe it or not, with my hero Paul McCartney, who is a whole other story and a lot of fun. So that brings us basically up to the present day, and I'm going to change subjects now because we're going to get into a little bit of the business. The main reason I went through that personal story is, besides that I think it's sort of a fun personal story, is to show that like there is no straight line to creativity and success or anything else. There's all sorts of things that beat you down, whether it's clients, whether it's the work you're actually doing, whether it's crunch, or your studio burning down. And I don't necessarily think I have a formula for how you keep creative during moments like that. I just want you to know that you can, and you almost have to. You really have no choice. So now we're going to talk about something else. This is, some of you, if you've ever seen me talk, you might know about this. If you haven't, just bear with me on this next bit. So this is my theory about the goose that laid the golden egg. So let's just go through this story really fast for those of you who have forgotten it. There was a goose owned by a farmer and his wife. The goose laid golden eggs. The farmer and the wife decided they wanted even more golden eggs, so they said, let's cut the goose open and get all the golden eggs that are in there. And of course, all they did was kill the goose. No more golden eggs for them. So here's the moral of the story: killing the goose, blah, blah, blah. I think that's just a little bit too simple. I think there's a better moral to the story, which is this: don't mistake the golden egg for the goose that laid it. So here's how you could tell the difference between the goose and the golden egg. The goose is organic and alive, and at this point you can see my PowerPoint skills are tremendously exciting here. Organic, okay. The golden egg is inorganic, has never lived, so remember that. The egg itself has no life, has no pulse, has no heart. It's just a piece of gold, which is wonderful. So being nice to the egg is like polishing and expecting more eggs, but all you actually get is a really shiny egg.
Oops.
So, am I still on? I heard you say oops.
Yeah, you are. I just forgot to mute before I started typing.
Oh.
Please continue.
Please continue. So when corporations, who some of my best friends are corporations, so don't get me wrong here. Oh, but by the way, as an aside, you know when we talked about Neanderthals, Neanderthals went extinct, and of course that was the art that they made compared to Homo sapien art. But I just saw a documentary the other night where they said that all of us, or some of us, still have some Neanderthal DNA. So that's actually kind of enlightening to me because it sort of explains corporate executives. Okay, anyway. I'm sure some of you here are corporate executives. I love you. So when corporations mistake the goose for the golden egg, what they end up doing is giving us this. Battle for the Planet of the Apes was the final chapter in the original Planet of the Apes series. Probably one of the worst movies ever made. It's not even shiny. You know, the corporations think that the golden egg is what's important, so they just keep beating on it sequel after sequel, and almost always the quality goes downhill. So here's the thing. No one actually wants to kill the goose, but they don't have a problem with kicking it in the stomach. And a goose that's been kicked in the stomach probably won't be laying any eggs. Now, I think the next picture, if I'm correct, is a slide that I've inserted since I started giving this talk about the goose and the golden egg. One night I was at a dinner with some corporate executives from a large publishing company in the game business, and I was sitting next to one of the business guys who said to me, "Hey Marty, you know that your story about the golden egg and the goose is very interesting." He says, "But you know, sometimes there's nothing like a good foie gras." So that actually I still get chills up my spine just thinking about that moment, because I realized that for creatives who don't actually produce a golden egg or produce a golden egg on time, or who knows for what reason, there are people out there who would rather just eat your liver. So just remember that. Okay, so let's get back to the metaphor that I'm stretching absolutely as far as possible. All geese look the same, so pay attention to the eggs they lay. You pay attention to the geese that lay golden eggs. Those are the good ones. They all look the same, and it's not hard to take care of for a goose. And I looked this up on the internet, as you can tell. All you need is to build a lean-to. They have a place to get out of the rain, and they're cheap. They eat grass. So, which reminds me of most game production development studios. You know, pizza, right? During crunch. There you go. So you might be saying, nice, is that all? You know, we have a company where we mentor and we love and we do everything for the creative people. It's like we want to be super nice to the geese. And it needs to be more than just nice. And all I'm pleading for is for not to be mean. If you just stop being mean to creative people and you're just nice to them, it's amazing how much spectacular work you'll get from those people. So being nice is really the minimal bar. And here is, you know what? Each of us can be mean, and we can be mean to other creative people. Just because, you know, I'm a creative doesn't mean I can't be a total asshole. I've been mean to other creative people, and I've been mean to my own inner goose. So now you have a new thought, your inner goose, that place that comes up with something that you're sort of tentative about, and then there's another voice in your head that says, oh, that's a stupid idea, that'll never work, or you're not a writer, or who do you think you are? Those voices inside your head that can squelch the tiniest spark of an idea. Or if you're in a group of creative people and somebody goes, hey, you know, what about this little idea? And you're just like, no, that's dumb. Don't be mean, because every small idea or every incredibly large idea comes from a spark of an idea. And if you put it out when it first happens, it's gone forever. So don't be mean. But yeah, corporations are almost always mean. Not always, but almost always mean to creative people. And I think it's just because they don't get it. And here's the thing, just to remind you, people are this. They're organic. For those of you who wonder where that image comes from, it's the image of humanity that's on the Voyager. I think this was chosen by Carl Sagan. So apparently to the aliens in the future, we're all white Anglo-Saxon Americans. Anyway, but we're people, and people is where the creativity has to come from. And everything in the game business depends on the creativity of people. It's not some, and I got this off the internet also. This is a chart showing the creative process. If this was really a chart that was accurate showing the creative process, all corporate executives would have this in their office, and they would just bring people in and just point at it and say, do this. So it's people, not process. Okay, that's the end of the goose part. How am I doing on time there, Tom? I'm almost there. Tom? Anyway,
you
Tom
can
left.
have as much time as you want. No, I'm here. Can you hear me?
Okay.
Wait a minute. No, I was muted because I was typing something.
That's good.
Yeah, you can. If we go, this is no thing. I think we're still fine, and
Okay, good.
and I don't care. You can talk as long as you want.
All righty.
If they don't want to listen, they can leave. I mean,
People can just leave.
I'm fine with this.
Okay. So the next thing I want to talk about, which piggybacks to the goose and the golden egg thing, is, of course, here I keep coming back to Paul McCartney. The interesting thing about Paul is, sure enough, early in his career, he lost basically the most fundamental rights to all of the songs that he and John wrote and the Beatles wrote, almost their entire early catalog. He made some bad business decisions, and he had no rights to them. So for years, he still was, massively successful, and but it was always this thing where his pride and joy, all the golden eggs that he made with John from the early days were really in control of other entities. And when he worked with Michael Jackson in the early 80s, on a couple of hit songs, and became friends with Michael, and told Michael that it's a really smart thing to do with your money to buy catalogs and libraries of music. And sure enough, when the early Beatles catalog came up for sale after 20 years, Paul was trying to buy it, and he got outbid by Michael Jackson. So Michael Jackson bought it. So, and I've heard this story from Paul, so it's pretty interesting. But Paul actually called Michael and said, "Hey Michael, you've got the catalog. That's great. Maybe it's time to renegotiate." And Michael said, "Sorry, Paul, it's just business." So, and there you go. That was my impression of Paul McCartney and Michael Jackson. Thank you very much. So anyway, I think that's pretty amazing. Finally, at Paul, just a year ago, at age 71, he got his catalog back again. So, I mean, he had to buy it, of course, but it's just an amazing thing to think about the kind of corporate structures that can have that kind of thing happening. The stuff he created being so out of his control until he's age 71. Another composer, John. This is not Paul and John. This is Creedence Clearwater Revival John.
Fogerty.
Fogerty's. Thank you. Wow. I need notes for that. Unbelievable. John Fogerty is another one who's, I don't know if you know the story, but all of his Creedence music that he wrote was in the control of a evil publisher. I'm just going to say it. It was an evil publisher. So evil to the point where John stopped performing his songs because he didn't have any control of them. And he came back and actually wrote a song, and the publisher sued John Fogerty for plagiarizing himself. And that was the lawsuit. It was because he wrote music that sounded too much like John Fogerty. Thankfully, this went to a jury trial. John won. Basically, the ruling is it's impossible for a composer to plagiarize themselves. But it took him another 10 years before he got his legal fees back, which were over $1 million. And he went all the way to the Supreme Court. So I'm thrilled about that. Composers can't plagiarize themselves. Artists can't plagiarize themselves. It's something we need to remember. And then, of course, there's Prince. It's a more contemporary story now. I finally moved up to the 90s. Prince, the reason he did this love symbol for his name is because the name his mother gave him, Prince, became in the control of publishers. And so he became the artist formerly known as Prince because he no longer had control over his own material or his name until he finally got it back and became Prince again. There's a whole story behind that which is amazing. I hope there's some business people of the attendees who are going to ask questions about this. This is not me complaining about work for hire, because I think work for hire is absolutely essential to a collaborative, creative effort that's going to be sold and marketed. So here's the reason why work for hire is needed. So I have no problem with work for hire, but what do I find, especially with young creative people, is they don't realize that there are work for hire contracts and there are work for hire contracts. Some work for hire contracts can be absolutely heinous. Not all work for hire contracts are created the same. Not all work for hire situations in corporations are the same. You know, Google treats its work product differently, let's say, than Microsoft, and I'm sure there are good reasons why that is. Not all work for hire is the same. The next thing that I'm going to talk about is the way it can be abused. You can have work for hire contracts that say you can't have credit for what you've created. You can't be part of a performing rights organization like ASCAP or BMI. Absolutely, there's no way to get future payments if what you've created for one specific thing ends up being used in a completely new place that's making more money. It could be used for things you never intended it to be used for. For example, you can do art and then later on see it not only in a different product, it could be a different game, it could be on a TV commercial, it could be in a porno, and this happens. It actually does happen. And then there's this issue of moral rights, and I'm just going to go over this a little bit. Moral rights is something, and I would love somebody to tell me why the concept of moral rights doesn't exist in the United States. It exists in almost every other country in the world. And I'm going to show you an actual contract that is offered by a major publisher in the game industry. So here's what moral rights are. It doesn't have anything to do with economic rights and copyrights. So it's just that if you created something and you've assigned your copyright to a third party, you still have the rights to retain maintain the moral rights to that work. But there is publishers in this country that will not let that happen. And here's actual language. So you can read this, but these are what moral rights will allow you to have: to be known as the author, to prevent others being named as the author, from others falsely attributing the author which you didn't create, making changes that are deforming to the work you made, and all of these things. So this is the moral rights, and in this little paragraph, the employee understands that this is what moral rights are, and then the publisher says this: the employee hereby irrevocably waives any and all such moral rights to the benefit of the company. I mean, this is just mind-boggling to me. Like, if any of you see this coming at you, please run away screaming. I can't tell you how many people have signed this exact deal. And this is why you need to get a lawyer or an agent. Because if something like that is presented to you as part of a work-for-hire contract, and the problem is in our business and in every entertainment business, you have a strong buyer and a weak seller. And this is what happens. This is being mean to the goose. You just are desperate for work, and you can't push back on things like this. I would love to see, and I've suggested this for a while, and I'm sure there are things out there, but IGDA, other organizations getting together and saying, here's a template for work for hire, and this is the recommended work for hire template across the board. And I would love to see somebody like the IGDA, and this is my suggestion, Tom, you tell me what you think, but I'd love to see the IGDA, for example, look at different publishing agreements from all the major publishers and have a little IGDA stamp of approval on it. And if it's not approved,
you know that they all have confidentiality provisions, and you can't talk about what's in any of them. And if you want to have a discussion about this, I have a slightly different view of the waiving of moral rights. Not as to attribution, but as to certain of those rights that would, for example, allow somebody who did an animation on a character deciding that he doesn't want that animation being used anymore.
Well,
it gives the right of any contributor to a game. And how many contributors were there to your last game?
Yeah, I mean, certainly there's...
You don't want anybody to be able to pull the plug on the whole product, and that's the problem.
I understand that, but I got to believe that there's a way to protect the creators in the most fundamental sort of like, hey, this is my work. I should be able to tell people I worked on it. This is my work. I should. That's
a very different thing to me.
Yeah,
there are certain moral rights that go too far, you know, and and I think so. The simple solution is you waiving all your moral rights. By the way, I don't think you can waive your moral rights, but I don't want to say that out loud because I have clients that are studios.
But see, I guess what bothers me is the simple sort of legal solution, and I totally understand how you don't want to have a bunch of actors and creators and artists and musicians floating around out there who can somehow pull the plug on the project or continuing to monetize the product. But there's got to be something simpler than this draconian kind of language that says you have now irrevocably, for all time in all universes, waived your moral rights. There's got to be a better way to do this, and I just wish we could.
I'm sure there is. I mean, you could waive your moral rights and then give people a right of attribution. To me, if a studio or a publisher, and I represent studios, I don't represent publishers, but if they're asking for you to, not use your moral rights to kill a project, that's one thing. If they're saying you can't tell anybody which part of this is yours, I think that sucks. Or you don't get credit in this game. The IGDA, me personally, and the IGDA has been fighting for in-game credits for contributors for years.
Yeah.
And we actually found out recently that Microsoft adopted our model for providing credits in games to use in their internal studios, which we didn't even know they did that.
Oh, that's great.
Do you have more slides, or you want to take some questions?
No, I have one more slide.
Okay.
So here's my wrap-up, big finish. Just remember, be nice to the goose within you. Remember that stretched metaphor. And be nice to the geese around you. And that's the end of that. Thank you very much.
And you're still on time.
Ah, see, that's great. That's what I was going for. I was zipping through that.
That last thing, I think it's really true. I'm going to put my picture up now so you're not alone.
All right.
Because one of the things that I find studios, people who run studios a lot of times, and anytime creative people are in negotiations, is they seem to not treat they don't treat their companies like they're a separate entity. You should leave your screen up, or there won't be anything when.
Oh, I'm sorry.
Yeah.
Ooh. Well, then I don't see myself, but that's okay. I don't really like looking at myself.
Here, we can use mine.
Okay. No, I got it.
All right. Anyway, that they don't. I have the same problem, so this is where I came up with this, and this is you have to treat, people tend to treat their customers, right, or their players or whatever, with a tremendous amount of respect, and they don't treat themselves or their own business with that same level of concern. And I realized a while ago, although I'll admit that I don't do it, that I needed to treat my law practice as my most important client. And just like you need to treat Marty O'Donnell Music as your most important customer, not the people that that company's working for. And that's kind of what the corporate fiction is supposed to do. It creates a legal entity that's other than you.
Right.
But there's just an awful lot of trying to be liked and trying to be nice, and maybe it's because I don't know, the developers are insecure or some shit, but there's a lot of just not really giving yourself the credit that you're due. And being, or I hear people all the time when they're negotiating, and either they sign contracts without having any counselor read them, regardless of whether it's just a friend who's got more business sense than you, or a lawyer that you're paying. I mean, a lot of times it's an economic issue. You just don't have a lawyer, or can't justify the expense. I don't want to go into how stupid I think that is. Or you just don't, you think that, oh boy, I really want to do this, and you sign the thing. But at the same time, you know very well at this point that having someone else representing your interests, who their job is to make sure you get the best deal, is so much easier. Geez, I was a musician for a while and songwriter. I had no idea whether my stuff was any good. And I think a lot of creative people are like that. Whatever it is, no matter how good it is, all you hear are the parts where it's not good.
Yeah.
Do you get that when you finish something? I mean, yeah, it's nice, but geez, it's kind of weak here.
Well, no, and Tom, I think you put your finger on it. It's like creative people tend to be filled with self-doubt. It's hard to have a lot of self-confidence, even when you've been very successful. You kind of go, gee, I'm successful, but nobody knows really I don't deserve to be successful, or nobody knows really that I'm some sort of a sham or a fake. I really don't know this.
Of course, we all know you're faking it. I know you're faking it because I know I'm faking it.
As personality types, people who are born exploiters, who are in business, they don't seem to have that lack of self-confidence. They're really, really good at exploiting, and creative people tend to be really good at creating but not have a lot of self-confidence. So when the two come together, the exploiter can say, hey, I'll take that blues piece that you made and give you a ham sandwich, and the creative person...
Oh, he liked it. He actually liked that piece. Wow, this is great. Yeah. Well, I think the problem is, if you want to succeed in our industry, or any creative industry, I guess, you really need somebody who can take your work and exploit it to its fullest to make a living, right?
Absolutely. No, I mean, that's the thing.
But they're exploiters.
Yeah, exploiters are great. Now, here's my point about exploiters, though, that I give to people who are basically creatives, is that as exploiters, if you're a born exploiter, a blank sheet of paper comes up and someone says draw art or write a story or make music, exploiters can't do it, and they can't even learn how to do it. That's the only advantage we have as creatives, is that we know how to create. And if we need to know a little bit about being exploiters, we can learn about business and legal things and contracts. We might not ever be born exploiters. It might not be part of our basic DNA, but we have brains, and we need to learn the pitfalls and learn a little bit about exploitation, because exploitation, I know it sounds like a dirty word the way I use it, but it's not. Business has to exist in order for us to make a living. I love exploiters because they know how to market IP, and they know how to push it, and they know how to sell it.
Yeah, but they're also going to exploit you if they can.
Going to exploit you, so that's why I think it's important for us to be, wary as foxes, right? I mean, we have to learn enough so we protect ourselves, or hook ourselves up with lawyers and agents that will be representing our interests a little bit more than just being happy to have a ham sandwich.
Yeah, I use the Ferengi analogy. They're like Ferengi. They are, and you know what? Ferengi are not evil. I mean, you said evil publisher, and I'll tell you what, they're not evil. They just have a very different culture.
Yes.
They have their whole value system has nothing to do with creativity or even having a good product. They don't care about any of that shit. They just care about profits.
Which is why they can say something like foie gras in a conversation talking about
that is chilling shit, man. Hey, we've got a couple of questions here from the Peanut
Gallery. Do it.
Let me see what I got here. If I can, damn, it's tiny type. This stuff isn't made for old guys. Let's see. Fellow flute player here. Jethro Tull is amazing. That's from Mark. I don't think that's actually a question.
Yay.
I've always been fascinated by Flintstone vitamins and why it was Flintstones that were the IP that was chosen to get into the vitamin industry over successful cartoons of the time. Do you think there was something special about the Flintstones, or do you think it was just more of the idea of connecting vitamins to cartoons, coupled with your great music, of course, that made it a hit? Any insight there? That's a great question.
It is a great question. You know what's funny about that is by the time when we did the commercial in 1985, I think the Flintstones had their heyday as a cartoon in the 60s, but they just kept hanging. The Flintstones as a cartoon hung around forever, and then there was Pebbles and Bam Bam and all sorts of spin-offs. I think when Flintstones Vitamins started, it was actually started in the 70s maybe, and it was because that cartoon was successful. The jingle didn't happen until much later. It was sort of the reboot of Flintstones Vitamins, and I'm happy to say, I believe that the jingle probably did help Flintstones Vitamins still be the thing. I think it's because for some reason kids love chewing cartoon characters for breakfast.
Yeah, but I get that. But why? Do you have any idea why that IP? I mean, was that Hanna-Barbera trying to market their IP, or was it?
No, I think.
Hey, look it. Here's a cartoon character, and they've got cute little kids in it that people can identify with. I mean, it's a brilliant choice. They never told you, did they?
They never told me. I have no idea why. I just did the gig.
All right. Re the goose and the golden egg analogy. Do you think that a fair number of one-hit wonders were more a product of being mistreated than a lack of creativity? And how do you tell the difference?
Yeah, that's a good question. I think when you look at the music business, you look at the movie, television business, there are a lot of one-hit wonders, and I believe that if people were nicer to creative people, if the systems were a little bit more nurturing for creative people, I think you'd have some percentage less one-hit wonders.
Yeah. My son, Thomas, my son,
yeah.
He went to University of Central Florida years ago, and one of his teachers there had worked in mid-level management at Tiburon. And this teacher mentioned to him that, so I'm assuming it's true, but this is mere conjecture on my part. Thank you. That's the old liability exposure alarm going off. As I understand it, this guy said that they used to use the term churn 'em and burn 'em in their management meetings when referring to the fact that they had pretty much an unlimited a supply of people who wanted to make games.
Yeah.
And when I heard that, it sort of was the foie gras thing where I'm thinking, oh my God, there could be that one guy or that other guy, the Genova Chen, the Notch, the guy who's going to do something that really makes a huge impact on our whole industry, the art of games. Like it's just total disregard for games as art or having any value as a cultural phenomenon or all of the things that we get so much about this. And I was just, I mean, this was all happening around the same time that the EA Spouse thing popped up. So I just couldn't imagine somebody in a company that relies completely on their creatives thinking that it's okay to do that. And this was like ingrained in their culture. So
burn 'em and burn 'em. That is chilling. That's to think that anybody could think that. I mean, and if you look at my slides, I do say pay attention to the eggs they lay. If you have people that are just pooping out white eggs, I'm not saying to be mean to those people, but those aren't the people that you need to rely on. But boy, when you've got a team that is actually able to make something special, the concept that they're all easily replaceable, you can churn them and burn them, it's bad business. You will end up making bad games if you have that attitude, because you're going to get rid of the ones, or you're going to burn out the ones who are laying golden eggs. And it's not just individuals. I mean, my goose analogy really is a team. It's like when you find that combination of a team that can do something special, holy mackerel, that is the
Yeah.
That truly is the golden ring that you're reaching for.
Yeah, but if you look at the really phenomenally successful studios, the ones who've been able to survive, I think there's two consistent things. One is somewhere along the line they got to retain ownership of their intellectual property, and they have a core of people that make magic. You know, that it may not be any one of them, but the combination of them is something more than any of them. I got another question. Actually, we've got a whole bunch of questions lined up here. People are popping up. I guess there was somebody out there. Do you have a strategy? And I know we were talking about this the other day when you were talking about. I don't know if you guys know this, but Marty has done the fanfare for the Video Game Awards. When is it? Friday? Is it Friday night?
Friday, tomorrow.
It's being webcast because they didn't get a network to pick it up, but they will someday. Anyway, it's pretty cool stuff, and there's a great video online on it too about the creation of it. Anyway, so I think we were talking about, you were sitting there going, can I do this? Like you forgot that you're a composer or something for a minute. Do you have a strategy to get in creative mood when working on a project that doesn't excite you? I don't think that's what I was talking about. And there's also a thank you this is from Luis Fernando de Leon. Thank you for the awesome webinar. Do you have some? Is there some trick that you do to get yourself in the mood? Or when it starts? How about when it starts to drag? And it always starts to drag.
Yeah, it always does start to drag, and also there's fear. Like I said, I mean, for me personally, I don't know how many can identify with this, but no matter what you've done in the past, you know, each day is new, and when that blank sheet of paper is in front of you and you have to produce, it's a scary place to be because you know you've been able to do it in the past, varying degrees of success, but there's no guarantee you're going to do it again. I mean, I've talked about, is this it? Was my last thing the bottom of the well? Like took the last drop out and now it's gone. So that's that inner voice being mean to the goose. So that's the way my voice sounds. Like your well is dry. You can't do this again. Usually what I do is I wander around. I take a walk. I sit down at the piano. I start noodling. I'll start noodling in areas that have nothing to do with what I might be trying to accomplish, just to sort of get me back into I can create music, I can do this, oh, that sounds nice, oh, I'll put that aside for some other project later because it's the wrong thing. Eventually, I wait for something to sort of hit me. Hopefully, if there's a real tight deadline, that has to happen really fast. Sometimes you end up having to sort of force things, and you have to just rely on sort of your bag of tricks. Yeah, I don't think I have one formula for doing it. It's also really helpful for me to have other people that I can work with. For example, for so many years, Mike Salvatore and I have worked together. He plays guitar. He's basically self-taught. I'm a pianist. I got a master's in composition, and I'm all official. But being able to bounce musical ideas back and forth to someone you really trust, who will tell you that's stupid, or that doesn't sound good, or it would be better if it went up at the end, or whatever. When you trust somebody, you know they're not just being mean, and that takes a lot of time. Having a collaborator is a wonderful, wonderful thing, at least in my situation.
So that thing you just said about being able to work collaboratively and not take it personally is really important, I think.
Yeah.
Let's have another one. Let's see. Okay. If you were to compare the role of a game designer to one of a sound designer, which processes, thoughts, and feelings come to mind? This is from Andrej Savage.
Game designer as opposed to a sound designer.
Yeah.
Yeah, you know, in the studios that I've worked at, or the projects I've worked on, it's always been incredibly important for me to sort of consider everybody on the core team is a game designer. Like if you don't understand games and game design and how people consume games, how people experience games, you're not going to just be a good composer throwing music over the wall and it works well in the game, or a good sound designer and throwing it into the game. You really have to mentally understand game design, at least to the level where you're able to have an intelligent conversation with the actual game designers and be able to get what they're looking for emotionally and technically and everything else, and just have the chops to be able to execute, and plus that vision. So I don't think you can be a film composer if you don't enjoy films. I don't think you can be a game composer or a game sound designer if you don't enjoy and understand game design. So that's what I would say to that.
But do game designers understand the importance of sound design?
The good ones do. The golden geese game designers understand the importance of sound and music, without a doubt.
All right, we got another one here. This is from Mark Blashkey, something like that. I'm sorry if I butchered your name. People do it to me all the time. Marty, I'm a game software design student studying at Westwood College online. I live in Maine, where there are no game publishers. My hope is to open my own indie design company. Does this seem like a good idea, or would I be better off trying to find some publisher designer to work with? My wife doesn't want to move out of the state. Are there any more options? What I want most is to use my own ideas to create games I want.
I would say absolutely. 10 years ago, I would have said, yeah, you need to move out of Maine because the technology and the infrastructure just wasn't there. I do think it's important for it's almost impossible, in my experience, for a game designer to make a game completely on their own. You have to rely on talented team of people. So find people at the university who are also interested in games, that have skills that are skills that you don't have, and then go online. I mean, the number of virtual teams that are working online and using all the different web tools that allow you to be connected and actually work together is truly, truly amazing. Third-party software, all the middleware, all the engines that are out there that you can use and modify, Unity and Unreal 4 and Crytek. I mean, there's so many things you can do. Wise, what's the other one? Yeah.
Yeah, there's a ton of things that make it accessible. I will say this.
Yeah.
I think in the last couple of years, in the last year and a half or so, I'm seeing it more and more difficult to succeed as a small independent studio. You know, the amount of content on the mobile devices, which was sort of an easy access point, is crushing the small companies and the ability to get any attention in the marketplace. The other thing is, I think it's real easy to think that you know how to make games because you love games.
Right.
And I honestly think that that's probably more hubris than a wise decision. And that if there's any way that you can work with people who are more experienced than you are, you know, everybody, and there are literally, you know, tens of thousands, if not hundreds of thousands of people working in the game industry, and I will bet you that every one of them wants to make the games that they want to make,
yeah,
and the ones that they want to play. And that's a really a great aspirational goal, but I think if you want to learn how to make games, you probably ought to make maybe several before you decide to make your own game. I mean, Marty, if you got your own company, you're free. You're going to make your own game.
No comment.
Yeah, right. I mean, well, you understand. You know what's involved, and I think the problem I see is these people look at games. I mean, I used to think I used to think a game designer was, and I've been doing this for 20 years. I used to think a game designer was somebody who had a great idea for a game, and it's not. It's somebody who has all these talents, and it's way more complex than people think, and then it looks at the outside. You've got to love games to do it. It's hard.
Yeah.
It's hard to do, and it's even harder to succeed. So if you can, you know, get your initial experience on somebody else's dime and learn how to make a living doing it, it's probably not a bad way to go.
Yeah, if you really set on not moving, let's say, from Maine.
Well, virtual teams are great. I have clients that have. I had one client where the head of the company was in Japan, his partner was in California, their development team was in Sweden, and I mean, virtual teams are very common now. The guys over at Spryfox they've got 20 people, and they're all over the place. You don't need a physical studio anymore, but you need to have relationships.
Yes.
So you need to find some sort of forum where you can develop the relationships. You're going to have to do what you said, Marty. You're going to have to give away some work and get people to like your stuff.
Yeah,
and find people.
Especially if you don't have experience, there's no doubt about it.
You got to be able to have that hive mind thing going.
Yeah.
Yeah. You're right, though. But and it's hard not to be a dream killer sometimes. Let's see what we got here. So what are your? This is good. I'm sure a lot of people are wondering this. I'm sure a lot of people are running some other things. I may say that one for last. When you're writing for a client, how often do you find yourself writing something you genuinely didn't like because it's what the client is asking for? I suspect this is more when you were doing commercials.
Yeah, actually, that does happen more. I mean, that Tidy Cat was probably the pinnacle of that particular moment.
It's probably the best thing you ever did because it got you to stop doing that shit.
It's true. I didn't ever think I would find that again, too. I used to talk about how I did a spot for kitty litter that made me stop wanting to write commercials. And then one day I thought, I wonder if that's even out there someplace. Sure enough, the wonders of the internet, I typed it in and that video came up. I'm like, oh my God, it's there forever. There are times when you have to please the client, but I mean, like Rick Nelson says, you got to please yourself. If you find yourself having a larger percentage of pleasing somebody else and not pleasing yourself, you probably just need to leave that particular business and find something else to do. That's what I think. That will kill your creativity over time. It's just a slow erosion. There are times when you have to, give them the fifth idea that you've been working on because they keep trying to change something. Finally, you just acquiesce and put in the things that the client wants. But those are not the things you're going to think fondly of in the future. I hear things, when I hear some of the things I've done in the past, whether they're for a game or a commercial, I can remember, a lot of times I'll remember some of the pain that happened to get where it was. And I can still remember, like, I'll hear the thing that I'm like, nope, that was still the wrong creative decision, and I had to put that in because that's what the client wanted. You just want to minimize that as much as possible, and you can't be a jerk. You can't just be an artiste and say, my way or the highway. You won't work long if you do that. But there are times when you have to sometimes find a hill to die on. I might find too many hills to die on, Tom, as Tom knows. But there are sometimes you have to fight for what you think is right, and there are times you have to compromise and without losing your soul. So it's a case-by-case thing, and it happens to all of us.
Oh, let's see. We've got a follow-up. Following up on the idea of... Wait a second. I got to save this one. Following up on the idea of trying to learn from more... let me do this one first because it's shorter.
Okay.
Any social media sites besides LinkedIn or Facetune? This is from Mark, the guy who wants to get engaged, where he can hook up with other developers. I guess TigSource, any of there's a lot of indie sites that you should probably look at for that stuff. I mean, I use LinkedIn for professional connections and Facebook for social connections, both of which are mostly game industry people. How about you, Marty? Do you use anything besides them?
Yeah, no.
Well, the other thing, keep in mind that Marty's in a little different situation than you are.
True. I mean, if I was starting out right now, I would definitely go to, like for me in my business, I would go to like Game Audio Network Guild and take advantage of everything that they have to offer to connect.
What's wrong with me? Just join the IGDA.
And then I would say IGDA. I'm sure there's all sorts of stuff on the IGDA that will help connect people of like minds or people who are trying to do independent games.
Yeah, there's special interest groups, and you can also, I mean, one of the things that I find about the industry, and this goes back to like when I first met you years ago in San Jose, was, people in the industry are very approachable. Even the people that you think of as superstars, Romero and guys like Marty and Will Wright, you can walk up to them. If you go to a conference, if you can get to GDC, or if you're in Maine, I would go to the Montreal Game Summit. Marty was up there as a keynote.
Yep, Montreal Game Summit was spectacular, and then there's the GDC. Isn't there one on the East Coast too, someplace?
No, there's the East Coast Games Conference, which is down in Raleigh. That's kind of a trek for him. I think Montreal would be. The problem is Montreal's not till next November. GDC in San Francisco is huge. And you can go and, just get in a room with more developers. I don't know if we have an IGDA chapter in Maine, but that's not a bad place to get with local people. But just, you can do some of it online, but there's nothing like pressing the flesh when you can.
Yep, absolutely. Yes, face-to-face talking with real developers is, if you can't, if you're not going to move, but you still have to spend some money on going to a conference, and it's just worth doing. It's absolutely worth doing, especially if you don't have any real connections at this moment.
Okay, you got a question about tools here? Best sound creation software for beginners? I guess you want people to begin with the best stuff they can get anyway, don't you? Just learn it.
There are so many great tools out there, and it's so much cheaper than when I started. I mean, even buying the product.
I'm sorry, as Marty's attorney, I can't allow him to endorse any software without being paid. We're gonna get little stickers on your shirt next. WY.
I would say that there's any of the sequence. If you're a musician, there's so many sequence softwares, Logic and Pro Tools and Reason, or not Reason, whatever. See, I can't even remember all of them. But all of them have some sort of like demo mode or introductory mode that you can get almost for nothing. What you can do, I mean, goodness sakes, you can use GarageBand and do amazing work in GarageBand. So there's no reason not to be able to create amazing content for pretty low entry fee, and then you can get game implementation middleware like Wise and Fmod, and you can get that almost. I think you can get it for free and just start to learn it and work with it. You have to pay for it if you actually have a product that's making money, but there's no reason not to actually know the tools. And if you're in audio and you don't know Pro Tools or one of the sequence software things or Fmod or Wise, you're just going to be behind the curve. So all those things are very easy entry points, so you should do that.
Do you think it's good for somebody who's just entering to get involved with something like Gang or those guys?
Oh yeah, absolutely. Gang has a whole sort of rookie, introductory, student level everything, and of course, I'm not a huge proponent of. I still think that there's something good about.
What is Gang?
A Gang is Game Audio Network Guild, GANG, and it's just all the people who make. I mean, I don't know any audio guys who or people who are not involved in it. So, and then there's the IA SIGs, which is Audio IA SIG, Special Interest Group. Which is that? Are those SIGs still part of IGDA? How do those?
I think the IGDA has an audio SIG, but I don't do audio, so why would I know? I'm pretty sure we have an audio SIG.
Yeah.
Marty, I got a last question for us because eventually we're going to have to
stop.
We're going to have to close this out. These guys are coming up with more and more questions.
Okay, that's cool.
But I like this one as a closer, so I put a bookmark in it. This is from Joshua Goodwin. What are your goals with your new company, and any specific any specific, I don't know what goes in here, you're hoping to work with?
Well,
I don't think you're going to answer the second one, but let's do the first part.
Yeah, I actually, there are some, there's Marty O'Donnell Music, LLC, which is my new little company that can do things like Jeff Keighley asking me to do a fanfare for the Game Awards show. And that's stuff like that is hugely exciting to me. If people want me to write music or consult on video game audio and music, I'll do it under the auspices of Marty O'Donnell Music. That doesn't necessarily get my inner goose super excited, even though I love writing music. I love making games too, so I can't announce the specifics behind this other thing, but there are some other guys out in the Seattle area that have found themselves free from former encumbrances, and we've sort of gotten together and we're looking at some of the next new technology and whether there's a game there that we want to make, and we're working together on that, and that's a lot of fun because it feels It feels a little bit like the old days. You know, just a small team trying to, you know, do something really cool and unusual. And there's so much new technology out there that is unproven and you know, needs some real tender, loving thought and care. Hardware will never sell itself. Hardware, no matter how cool it is, or how cool the platform is, or how cool the technology is, without creative people to make something compelling, it will never sell. And that's our ace in the hole. So I'm working with a game designer and some technical guys and some artists, and we're putting together something that I will love to announce to the world very soon. And it's very exciting. So that keeps my creative juices flowing.
Any interest to get back in the grinder for another giant AAA 3-year deal?
Not at the present moment, Tom. I've done that for a while, and yeah, that is a grinder. It is a churn and burn kind of situation, and I think.
Yeah, but the results are so good. Well, they are. You know, at least you're part of them. I don't know.
Oh, thanks.
All right, Marty, thank you so much. Everybody here, thanks for coming. We really appreciate your attendance. First Monday of the month, business and legal. Second Monday, well, I don't know, you know this. Go to the site, keep track of this stuff. This will be posted on our site, and I don't know, Marty, you may want to put a link to it on your site, IGDA.org. If you're not a member, join. You never know, we might start making these members only. And let me see if there's anything else I'm forgetting. Thank you, Tristan, for helping with this. I hope you got a good recording of it. I have the backup. Marty, thank you so much. I guess I'll see you tonight.
Yeah, thank you. Bye, everybody.